Critical thinking is a skill that everyone should learn, especially in our fragmented information ecosystems. Scrum and Kanban actually have elements of critical thinking built in, but you may not have realized it. Why does this matter? Because you're working with humans on a team, and the information presented to you as an Agile leader may or may not be complete. In this video, I'll review the critical thinking pieces you may have missed that can make a big difference on a daily basis. As a Scrum product owner or Scrum master, when you look at the information in your project, how do you determine whether you're seeing the whole picture? Are you being told the truth about the progress of the project? Let's talk about how critical thinking can help you. First, let's start with the definition. I surfed the internet and came up with the following. Critical thinking involves the gathering of information followed by the practice of analysis, evaluation, and synthesis to an end goal, while retaining a healthy dose of skepticism and logical reasoning. You probably employ critical thinking without realizing that this process has a name, and yet it sounds like what we're doing every day as Agile professionals. Here are the steps that we can extrapolate from that definition. Gather the information, analyze and evaluate it, ask a lot of questions about what you see and hear, and synthesize a result. These sound like good practices in the context of Agile leadership. But does Agile incorporate critical thinking? Indeed it does. We gather information and put it into Jira, Confluence, and so on. We analyze product requirements and turn them into epics and features. We ask a lot of questions to come up with the stories and tasks. And we synthesize all this activity into a result, a shipped product. But that's not all we need to have a successful Agile team. Let's apply critical thinking to a typical Scrum setup. Let's look at the structure of a Scrum team and determine whether or not we're getting all the information we need to ship a product successfully. Fortunately, Agile practices have evolved to build in these steps already. Here are some examples. For gathering the information, Scrum teams and Kanban teams mostly use task tracking tools like Atlassian Jira, Microsoft Azure DevOps, Monday.com, or Asana to keep track of the records of the work to be done. These tools can take care of the day-to-day activities. For planning and long-term knowledge storage, teams will use things like Atlassian Confluence or the Wiki in Azure DevOps. Bigger companies may have a SharePoint site to collect and retain that information. Product requirements have to be stored somewhere. Depending on the tool the team uses, they may use the Wiki or something like Atlassian Confluence. Sometimes product requirements can be stored directly in the same task tracking tool. So that stakeholders can view project status, most task tracking tools provide some kind of dashboard view with high-level summaries. But we're missing something here. Have we agreed that the contents of these tools represent the true state of the project? Actually, no. We've made an assumption, and we need to back up another step and ask ourselves, do we have a single source of truth? If there's one question you can answer that will alleviate communication headaches, this is it. So now, establishing a single source of truth becomes step 0 in the list. If the various teams contributing to the product don't agree that there is a single source of truth, you'll be at odds with each other until you do agree. Okay, so this layout of information isn't ideal, but let's go with it for now. But now there's another question. Who is we? Let's add the people involved in a typical Scrum team and see what that does to the storage and flow of information. Well, we have the Scrum product owner, the Scrum master, the dev team, and their engineering manager. Is that all? No, don't forget the project manager who, by the way, has their own schedule with information in it. If you're lucky, it might be stored in the same task tracking tool. Don't forget about the stakeholders. They have an interest in project information. Is that it? No, what about the other teams on which your product depends? For the sake of argument, let's add product marketing team, a data team, a systems or platform team, and a security team. So you're probably realizing that you might not have taken into account all of these teams, each with their own agendas and priorities. This is why agreeing on a single source of truth is so critical. A little later in this video, we'll talk about how to pull together all these parties so that everyone's getting the information they need on a timely basis. We've addressed the idea that we've gathered the required information, or at least identified all the interested parties. Now let's talk about what we do with the information. For analyzing and evaluating the information, well, product owners do analyze and evaluate the product requirements, and they negotiate with stakeholders on priority. They then process them into epics and features, depending on the task tracking tool's operating model. Scrum and Kanban teams analyze the incoming product requirements as they're submitted and process them into stories and tasks. They evaluate and make decisions about when features will ship and who will handle the segments of the product. So we're already using our critical thinking skills to select and extrapolate the work to be done. For the asking a lot of questions about what you see and hear, there are 2 regular meetings where questions and answers are the purpose: the daily stand-up and the Scrum of Scrums. In the daily stand-up, participants report their status, and during the parking lot at the end of the meeting, have discussions about what they've heard from their fellow team members. The Scrum of Scrum meetings are held in larger companies where you may have multiple teams working on the same product. A representative from each dev team, along with the product owners and Scrum Masters, attends and provides status updates. In some companies, the product owners do all the talking. In others, the Scrum Masters go over the dashboards to review the statistics. Depending on the length of the meeting, all 3 parties may contribute. But don't forget about those quarterly meetings where stakeholders have lots of questions. Your time cycle for the stakeholder meetings may vary, but no doubt they occur where you are. So, synthesizing result, we take all that information, we code it, we build it, we test it, and we put it into a final product. That's the primary result of all that activity. Okay, I showed you that typical Scrum setup with all those people needing information. Let's circle back and figure out how we can get everyone talking to each other based on that common and acceptable single source of truth. So, who will be talking to whom? Well, the product owner will interact with the product requirements repository, the development team, the Scrum Master, and the task tracking tool. The dev team will interact with the SPO as well as their engineering manager, the task tracking tool, and the Scrum Master. The engineering manager will interact with the dev team, the task tracking tool, the Scrum Master, and the project manager. The Scrum Master will interact with the SPO, the dev team, the engineering manager, the task tracking tool, the project manager, and the dashboard. The project manager will interact with the engineering manager, the Scrum Master, the dashboard, the schedule, and the stakeholders. Oh, and the stakeholders will interact with the project manager, the schedule, and the dashboard. So maybe we have the immediate team's needs covered, but what about the peripheral teams? These could be teams within the company or services upon which you depend to host or support your product. Well, the Scrum product owner will likely be the only one talking to the product marketing team, so that one's easy. The data team, the systems or platform team, and the security teams will probably want to bypass any gatekeepers and go straight to the dev team for accurate information. The dev teams won't like that because they want to code, not sit in meetings. So these teams might go straight to the Scrum Master for information and direction as to who they should consult for information. I have done this many times in my assignments. The third option is to have these teams talk to the engineering manager. The EM will like this because they want to be the gatekeeper for their team and defend their time and priorities. Now, if you're really adventurous, you could allow these exterior teams to have direct access to the task tracking tool, but that can be risky unless you're confident in their abilities to add useful information. So this is why you need processes. If you don't already have processes in place for communicating with peripheral teams, then that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. As an Agile leader, you can initiate better collaboration using a simple technique that I'll describe. I alluded to this in my video on Agile leadership, but I'll explain it in greater detail now. This is a process I have personally done multiple times. It's preferable to have the Scrum Master create the process diagram, but anyone who is aware of all the parties involved in the product creation and or who understands the flow of work between teams can accomplish the task. Number 1, identify the teams that directly affect or contribute to your team's product. Number 2, ask or research who would be a good spokesperson for that team. Talk to the engineering manager, the product owner, your dev team leads, etc. Check the org chart in your email client if necessary. 3, make a 30 to 45-minute Zoom appointment with each spokesperson. Number 4, create a high-level initial diagram of what you understand to be the flow of the work between the teams in Miro or some other whiteboarding application. Number 5, in each appointment, have them describe what they think the workflow is. Use shapes and sticky notes to annotate and/or correct your diagram. Number 6, clean up the diagram and then set up a meeting with all the spokespeople and any other applicable stakeholders to get last-minute corrections and the buy-in on the final diagram. Now that you have an initial diagram of inter-team processes, it's time to put those processes down on paper. For these inter-team dependencies, a working agreement can detail who, how, and when you communicate to solve problems. For example, if there's a bug that can be traced to a system on which your product depends, how do you report that? Will the other team have one person or an email distribution list that responds? Who will capture and distribute those to-do items? What is the turnaround time for simple fixes? If there's a more complicated problem, when will you meet to discuss and resolve it? Your working agreement should include all of these examples and more. Remember when we discussed having a Scrum of Scrums meeting? Well, someone from the peripheral team should probably attend that too. If so, invite them to attend regularly. Finally, let's close by revisiting the synthesizing of a result of the information. Yes, we want to ship a product based on all the information we put together. But I'd also encourage you to recognize that by establishing inter-team processes and working agreements, we have 2 additional outputs. Number 1, codified processes. By acknowledging the interdependence of the teams and making adjustments to work within the processes, we are less likely to have unanticipated issues that might actually hinder shipping the product. Number 2, well-developed teams. By knowing our roles and knowing who to contact with issues inside and outside of our teams, we've built an organization that can repeat the success we just delivered by filling in the gaps using our critical thinking. One more thing. In case you're wondering whether all this work, regarded by some people as administrative rather than direct product effort, let me assure you that the proper planning up front always saves time when the deadline for shipping nears. By anticipating ahead of time anything that could prevent you from shipping, you're much more likely to not only ship on time, but ship quality, valuable software. And that's the whole goal of Agile, providing value to your customers. Be sure to tap that like button and hit subscribe to stay informed about Agile strategies. You'll be the first to know when my next video arrives. Until then, be sure to check out my Agile certification classes and my private chat server where fellow Agile professionals gather to support each other. The links to both of those are in the description. See you in the next video.